All right, everybody. On today's podcast, we're just going to say the truth. We are going to get the truth out there, whether it hurts or not. We're just going to lay the truth on the table and let it be. In today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka. I don't know why I did that just now. I didn't got to that point yet. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So let me just lay it out there for you guys. This first segment may bleed into the second segment. We may just scrap the second segment. We may end up talking about the second segment in this initial segment. And what's going to be going on in this podcast, we're just going to be laying the truth out there. The Pistons lost this game last night, or I'm recording this on the 19th, so last night against the Celtics. Cade didn't play, Fontecchio didn't play, Grimes didn't, all these guys were out, and the Pistons got destroyed, okay, and it was bad all around. Don't want to talk about that game because there was nothing good that came out of that game, and it just continued to, I think that game, at least from what I've seen in the Pistons community, has really pushed, I think, the fan base further to the truth. And when I say the truth, this is what I mean. I think I've been trying to hint towards this, I feel like, for the better half of the season. But a lot of people just don't want to hear this stuff and don't really want this to be talked about because, and I get it 100%. I talked about this on the Pistons Pulse podcast. A lot of people don't want this to be talked about because when you have this bad of a season, all you have left is hope. And if you take hope away, then you have nothing. And now everyone's just mad to be mad. You take that away, it is what it is. But at a certain point, you got to talk about the truth. And the reason why we're talking about this right now instead of the offseason, which was my initial plan, is because we are in a dead space right now until the Pistons' next game. They did just have a really bad loss, and I'm watching the Pistons community kind of blow up talking about this very subject. So this is where we're going with this. And again, this may bleed into the second segment. It may be a long episode. The Pistons this offseason need to seriously evaluate their core four guys. And when I say seriously evaluate, they need to seriously consider moving on from one or two of them. That's just where I believe I'm close to being at. I'm starting to see other Pistons fans, starting to see the fan base start to grow towards that. And before everyone who is just, in love with all the prospects, let's just calm down and have an actual conversation and non-biased looking at this team. The team is 12-56. It's an awful season. This is where the Pistons are going to be at this offseason. They're going to be signing Cade to an extension this offseason. It will be happening. Cade will be signing an extension this offseason. He's going to be entering year 4. There is no more time to wait around and rebuild. There is no more time to wait around and watch guys develop. If there's one good thing from this season, is that Cade had a good season and most people see that he can be the guy. Or most people believe that he's taken a step that would make you believe he's on the right trajectory. Like he's the one bright spot from this season. There is no more time to just wait for guys to develop. You need to put a winning product on the floor in year 5 of your rebuild, in year 4 of your franchise player. It has to happen. I guess I should say this too. This is going to be a mixture. This is a mixture of my opinion, what I've heard, what I'm hearing, and what I get a sense from the people I've talked with, from the people I've talked with all season, in, out of the organization, around the organization, all this. This is just my feel mixed all together. What does Nick Wright call it? It's a rich tapestry of all of that combined, which is where how I've arrived at this conclusion. With that, knowing that to be the case, it starts with your core 4 guys. Because if those core 4 guys and the guys I'm talking about is Cade, Ausar, Ivy, Duren, in the offseason, if all of them took the step that Pistons fans thought they would have made, they would not have had this bad of a season, no matter the surrounding cast. Now, the surrounding cast made it incredibly harder for them to do so. Yes, and the surrounding cast did not help at all. But these guys did not take steps forward that people wanted to see. And that's just the simple truth of the matter. I know people don't want to hear that. I know it's a tough conversation to have. But it's the simple truth of the matter. Let's start with Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren has either not moved at all defensively or taken a step back defensively. And at the center position, that you need your defensive center or your center to be an anchor for you defensively. He has to be good defensively. And he has not improved or even taken a step back. He's also, we talked about in the last episode, some bad habits that he's really picking up on as the seasons went on. And remember, at the beginning of this year, when the losing streak first started, I said on the podcast, after listening to JJ Redick and Tim Legler talk about what happens to teams at this losing streak and are this bad, that if you don't do anything about this soon, that players will develop bad habits and it's going to be hard to break them. And it's going to guys are going to get worse. And they waited until the trade deadline to do anything. They let it soak for 4 months. They let it just continue for the longest time. And now you see what you see. So Duren's developing bad habits. He's not getting better defensively. He's no longer making the process reads. He's no longer making these passes out of the short roll. He's no longer finding open teammates as often as he was. He has not taken the step that people, or some improvements that people wanted to see. Yes, he's gotten better at driving to the basket and finishing around the rim. But I don't think people really wanted to see that from him this year. Yes, he improved in that, and that's cool to see, but is that impactful? Is that going to matter? And I've said this numerous times in the podcast. No, it's not going to be. Not with this team you've assembled. Not with what you need from that five. Him being able to occasionally attack a guy off the dribble and finish around the basket is not going to be impactful enough to matter. It's not like that's not what you needed from him to improve on. That's what Duren. With Ivy, Jane Ivy was someone I thought was going to make this core work because I thought he could be a good shooter. I thought he would be a better shooter this year. This year, he is in the 11th percentile in spot-ups. Listen, I know Ivy has a strong fan base because he has ties to Detroit and the way he plays, people like it. It's explosive. It's electric. I get it, okay? But we have to be honest. This is not hating. This is just simply I'm not making these numbers up. Jane Ivy is in the 11th percentile on spot-up threes. In January, he was shooting around 20% on open threes. We're now in March 19th, and on unguarded open threes, he's shooting 34%. He's in, what is it? He's in the 23rd percentile. On all catch and shoots, he's in the 28th percentile. He's taken a massive step backwards. And his defense remains to be something. He's taken a step, improved somewhat defensively, but it's still going to be something left to be desired. And now Pistons fans believe, there's a lot of people who believe that Jane Ivy has looked better with the ball in his hands. So if he's taken a massive step back shooting-wise, and now people believe he's better with the ball in his hands, how does he fit next to Cade Cunningham? This is just a simple truth. This is a simple conversations that everyone needs to be having. And conversations that the front office is having. Conversations that this team is having. If Ivy is not a great spot-up shooter, if he is not improving as a shooter, and now you feel like he's better with the ball in his hands rather than off, how is that someone who fits with your franchise player? How? How is that the case? Let's add into the fact that based off of what I understand and the feeling that I've gotten, what I've sensed from the organization, is that the two guys that the Pistons do not want to move off of and that are basically their highest priority guys are Cade Cunningham and Ausar Thompson. The next thing you want to add into that is how good Ausar Thompson looked when he had, or how just good the lineups looked when he had a stretch big next to him. And there was a segment, JJ Redick and LeBron James just had a podcast dropping. I listened to it. It was fantastic. And there was about 5 minutes when they talked about, I'm not going to go in depth, but there's a segment of that podcast that if you listen to it, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a little hint right there for you. It'll be a little Easter egg. I won't say what exactly it is. But Ausar next to a big that can shoot with Cade, like that, it just makes more sense. That seems to make some sense. And it worked when they had Muscala, when they had Gallinari. Those aren't even good players, but they could space the floor at the five. So this is, This is not hating on these guys. This is not, I think they're all good prospects still. I still think Ivy is a good prospect. I still think Duran is a good prospect. But it's this, like, what people don't understand, and what people are going to quickly understand if they don't this offseason, is that the Pistons are in a position where they can no longer wait. If this season, if they played this, and it's just unfortunate, it is. It's extremely unfortunate. But people will learn this offseason. The Pistons are in a position where they can no longer wait for development. Cade is going to sign an extension this offseason. You are going to be entering year 5 of your rebuild. Pressure is on this team, whether it be from outside noise from the fan base, whether it be from pressure from within, whether it be from pressure from above. They are going to be under pressure to put a winning product on the floor with your franchise player entering into an extension offseason and entering year 5. So the goal is no longer going to be to just develop guys. It's going to be, you need to put a winning product on the floor. They need to have a winning product. And this is just some truths that people need to comprehend. Now, does this mean that they 100% are going to be moving on from Ivy or during this offseason? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's something that's going to be considered, and it should be considered. Because I don't know how you want. And look, I don't know how many times I can say this. I know people love these prospects. Everyone loves to overvalue their own players. Everyone gets attached to their own players. I get it. Okay, I get it. But I don't understand how you can remove your bias from it. Look at a 12-56 season. Look at the numbers I just laid out for you, and just look at it basketball-wise, how you would not have these concerns and not think this is worthy of discussion. And I wanted to save this for the offseason, but since we're in this dead space until that game Friday, and based off what I'm seeing in the Pistons community, people blowing up, like this is just the truth of the matter. If Cade and Ausar are your top guys, and then Cade is heading into extension offseason, and the guys around them have not made those steps forward that you wanted to see, and now you're questioning whether they actually fit next to said guys. I think we got to wrap up this first segment. We'll keep talking about it moving forward. But last thing I'll say before we move on, I think I tweeted this out today too. The funniest part about this season is that if you just remove your bias from it, you look at the 12-56 record, and if you just like break down the roster like top to bottom, and you just continue to look deeper and deeper and deeper into the roster, the more crazy it looks, and the more insane like how bad the roster was and is, and some of the pieces that were expected to fit together. It truly, it does. At this point, it just gets funnier and funnier when you look at it. We'll continue to dive into this and talk about this unfortunate truth that I think the Pistons have now found themselves in because of this season. And then also we'll talk about this front office, how the next step of this truth being the front office, the coaching staff, the ownership, the organization. We'll break it all down. Stay tuned for that when we come back. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new, on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order a box when I want and how I want, no subscription required. And they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. My stylist always sends just right prices and the fit is on point. It's like they have the style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they always just get me. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. I don't like to shop and they save me time and effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look and feel really good. If you don't love something, you can just send it back as well. Shipping, returns, exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. Stitchfix.com/lockedon to feel as good as you look with Stitch Fix. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That is another great way to support the podcast. Let's keep going with this. So I think the next step of this, the next step of this conversation is, I guess, entering such a pivotal off season with questions like the ones I just pointed out. Do you trust this front office to answer those questions? Which is, and do you trust the front office to do what is needed to do to take that next step? I think most people would say no. So this is basically where I think this is what I expect to happen, basically. And again, this is a rich tapestry of what I think, my opinion, mixed with what I've heard throughout the season, my feeling, my sense from people I've talked to, like all that stuff combined into this rich tapestry. I feel like that if Troy Weaver and company remain, it's less likely you will see one or two of the core guys moved. I think that's less likely. I think if Troy Weaver remains, I believe what's most likely to happen would be those guys return, Stu returns, Grimes returns, Fontecchio returns, Sassa returns, and then they make like maybe one or two additions with the pick they have and the veteran in the offseason that they acquire. So if that's the road they go down, this is probably a conversation we should really save for the offseason. But again, like I said, we're in the dead space and a lot of people are talking about this. If that's the road they go down, what I'm starting to see that a lot of Pistons fans are picking up on, which is something I brought up to James Edwards and said myself, I think 2 weeks ago, but I'm starting to see more and more Pistons fans bring up, is that if that's what happens, how much better are they going to be next year? You're basically saying you're bringing back 8 guys from a 12-56 team. That's right now. We'll see where they're end up at the end of the year. But if that's the route they go, like you're basically like, I'm starting to see like more and more fans come to this conclusion, like, oh God, like how much better? Like they're not going to win much next year either. Which I think it's a fair thing to assume. I think look. This is a good way to go about this. If you know anybody or you talk to anybody, you follow anyone on Twitter or you watch people on YouTube or TikTok, like anything, any social media, if you follow people from outside Detroit that cover another team, or if you just are friends with somebody outside of Detroit, watch another team, fan of another team, ask them what they would believe, what they think about the Pistons bringing back 8 people from a 12-56 roster. Ask literally anybody. You guys have seen me bring on, I think 4 people throughout the year so far. We have a few more lined up. Stay tuned. But at least 4 people from outside of Detroit to talk about this. And bringing back like 8 people from the rotation, they all, like everyone, it looks at it like, do you want to lose again? Like, do you not want to get better? Like, what's going on? So if that's the route they go down, I completely understand why fans are questioning, okay, well, how much better would the team even be if you do that? I understand that, and I also look at it as I think that's something that is likely, or at least very high on the chance of happening if Weaver does stay around. Which is why, if you look at the side of the screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see, will the front office make the moves needed? I don't believe so. I think if Troy Weaver and this front office remain, I don't believe that they will move or make the trades necessary to put a winning product on the floor next year. Because I don't think they're going to want to move on from any other core 4 guys. And the Pistons don't got assets like that. And and remember earlier in the year when we said they put all their eggs into the basket, and maybe it opens up. Maybe they get saved this offseason. It could happen. Maybe they just get flat out saved. And where they've put all their eggs into the basket of, we have all this cap space, someone on a luxury tax team that's entering the second apron, someone's going to ask out, or someone on a bad contract that maybe is a really good player but has some questions, ask out, and we can just absorb their contract and give back expiring to that team, and they don't have to worry about taking on. They can get rid of their cap space early and free up all that and start to rebuild early. Like that's their whole that's where they've put all their eggs into their basket. It didn't happen at the trade deadline, and maybe something happens like that at the offseason and it saves everything. They get that player, they keep the core 4, and all of a sudden everything lines up perfectly and it works. Maybe that happens and they get saved. Even then, I still have some questions on the core 4's fit now together, seriously. But maybe that happens and it saves everything. Maybe. I think that's less likely to happen. I don't think it's as I don't think it's I don't think it's as likely as the front office seems to think it is. I know it's something they've talked about now for a year and a half, and it's yet to happen. I wonder why. So I just don't know if it's as likely as they think it is, which is why I believe the Pistons' only chance at getting out of this is by bringing in a new front office that is allowed to come in and completely reshape this roster. The Pistons have a boatload of cap space this offseason. A boatload of cap space this offseason. I'm going to get the exact number up for you guys. I probably should have had this beforehand. Real quickly. Not only do they have a bunch of cap space this offseason, they also have cheap assets on the team right now. Cheap assets. And a new GM coming in and taking over would be in the perfect position. It would be well capable, if they wanted to completely reshape the roster to put a winning product on the floor the following year. To give you guys an idea of what the Pistons cap space is, the only players that will be on the roster next year that are under salary: Cade at 13, Asar at 8, Ivy, let's assume Ivy, 7.9, Stu at 15, Duran at 4.5, and Marcus Sasser at 2.7. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and none of those players making over $15 million. Including all the team option guys, the Pistons have $82 million on next year. You take off the $4 million from Grimes, even though they might pick up Grimes, but you take off the $4 million from Grimes, you take off the $4 million from Troy Brown, you take off the $19 million from Evan Fournier. That's like an additional, 19, 23, 27, around $28 million. So they're going to have a boatload of cap space. They're going to have flexibility to do whatever they want to do. So I think that's the Pistons' best chance at turning this thing around, is bringing in a front office, bringing in a new GM and new front office, and let them decide. Now, if they decide to keep the core four guys together, whatever, let them decide that. But I believe they will have a better chance at flipping this roster and making a winning product than the current front office is. And I guess last thing I want to mention is this. I don't agree with some of from what I've seen. So there's some dialogue in the Pistons community that I don't agree with. I'm very strongly against. I don't really understand why people believe this. But I see a lot of people seem to believe that if you get rid of the core four, there's no way to win. If you don't win with these core four guys, the Pistons just won't win. And I don't understand why that's why do the Pistons have to win with this core four guys? Why does winning have to happen with those four guys? The Pistons have cap space. They have flexibility. They have young assets that could be moved. If this front office wanted to make a new roster, or if a new GM came in and wanted to flip this roster around Cade, or if this current front office, let's say they actually want to make some moves, and based off the senses I get, that Cade and Ivy are the two, or not Cade and Ivy, Cade and Asar are the two, I won't say untouchables, but near it, and you want to kind of like build around that. Why do people believe it's just, now it's screwed? You can't put a good team around those guys. Why? And I see another thing I see is that people think that, if you just build around Cade right now, he's not good enough for that yet. Why does every player that they get have to be so much worse than Cade? Like, if they get a player that, first of all, I think building around Cade and actually having a good roster around him, that makes sense around, not even just Cade. If you would have had a roster that made sense around basically all the guys, maybe it would have went better this year. But definitely if you build it around whatever guys you want to pick, if you just build a functional roster, they'll be at least decent. I'm higher on Cade than a lot of people are, so I feel even higher about building around Cade. But the point, nonetheless, being, even if you don't want to go that route, why? No one's saying that you have to go get a bunch of $5 million guys that are so much worse than Cade and just let Cade carry. Why does that have to be the case? Go get someone that's just as good as Cade right now. Like, why not? Go get someone that's maybe just below Cade right now, or is projected to be next year. Like, what? I don't understand. Why is that the case that people believe? I don't understand that. So we kind of got off topic and went on a rant a little bit, but Basically, this is all I wanted to do is take like the first 2 segments really to discuss this truth of the matter of where the Pistons find themselves and why they're at this position. They're in this position because of how bad this season went. If this season did not go this bad, they wouldn't find themselves in this position of having to question everything. But which is usually what happens when you have this historically bad of a season. Things get questioned and things need to be changed up. Along with the fact that Cade's entering year 4 and is going to be signing that extension this offseason with pressure from the fan base, pressure from within, pressure from the up top. They're going to need to put a winning product on the floor, along with some regressions from some of the core guys, questions about the fit now with some of the core guys. All that mixed in together, they are in a position this offseason now where they are going to need to put a winning product on the floor next year. And if they don't, things will blow before next year's deadline. I can promise you, you guys can book it right now. If they don't do that stuff and then they try to basically run it back with like maybe 1 or 2 additions in the offseason and things don't go well next year, everything's getting blown up before the deadline next year. And you guys can quote me, book it, write it. I promise you everything will get blown up. And then I don't think that's something anyone wants. They need to avoid that. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think about everything I said. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @Kukio. When we come back, I just want to ask this simple question. Who has had a good season for the Detroit Pistons this year? We'll talk about that when we come back. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched the feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So much easier and quicker that 2.5 million small businesses do use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply with linkedinjobs.com. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel @Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Before we get into, me asking who actually had a good season this year for the Pistons, and all that, I want to make sure I got everything out there. I'm not forgetting any extra details from what I want to talk about when discussing this core in the Pistons' future. I feel like we got everything out the way, and I've provided all the context needed for that. So if I remember something, we are going to stop the who had a good season and completely go back to that. Because I think I know this is the most popular conversation and the most needed conversation for the Pistons at this point. And it's going to be heavy throughout the offseason. It's going to be nonstop throughout the offseason because of how bad the season is and people want to know what's next. What's the plan? Which I know I've had a lot of you guys ask me. It's coming. You guys are asking me, cool, well, what's your plan? You keep saying these things. What's your plan? What would you do this offseason? And I have a plan. I have one. Like, I have that episode ready. It's just, I don't really want to go full offseason content with a month left in the season because then I'm going to run out of content. So I'm trying to find the right way to post it, but it's coming. We're going to have that episode where I give what I would do this offseason and how I would go about it, etc. So, anyways, though, who's had a good season for the Detroit Pistons this year? Well, I think Cade Cunningham, obviously, has had a good season for the Pistons. The Detroit Pistons have not had a good season. They've lost. But individually, the players, who has had a good season? Cade has had a good season. 22, 7.5, 4.3 on 45, 35, 86 splits. We talked about his numbers since the game 12 of benching, going away from the non-spacing lineups. We've talked about how well he's played over the last 2 months. We've talked about how well he's played since All-Star break. We talked about his efficiency getting better. He went from a 49 true shooting percentage in those 12 games last year, the 50% true shooting percentage his rookie year. He's now at 55 true shooting percentage. He's hovering around 56, 57 true shooting percentage since getting rid of that lineup at game 12. So I believe that's around a 45-game sample now. So Cade himself, he's had a good season. Another player I believe has had a good season, Isaiah Stewart, has had definitely a good season. Best year of his career. He's averaging 10.9 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists. The counting stats aren't really what I'm worried about. He's shooting 48% from the floor with over a third of his attempts, almost half of his attempts coming from three. He's shooting 38.3% from three on nearly 4 attempts a game. He's also shooting 57% on all twos, which is his highest percentage since his rookie season. He's having a career high year from the free throw line. He's been just as good defensively as he's always been. The Pistons are markedly better, according to on-off, when he's on the floor. I don't know how you can't say Isaiah Stewart. He's having his most efficient season of his career, 60.0 true shooting percentage. I don't know how you can't say Isaiah Stewart didn't have a good season this year. And this is coming from somebody who was not as high on Isaiah Stewart before the year. And I'm coming out right now to say this. I was wrong on Isaiah Stewart. I still think that he is a backup 4 or 5, but can be a really impactful backup 4 or 5. I did not think he would be as good as he was this season. He's been better. I didn't think he'd improve this much. He has. He's improved more than I thought. I didn't think that he'd be matching basically production-wise his contract and being above it. And he has. He has either matched his contract value or even done better than his contract value. I questioned giving him the contract before the year. Looks like it was a great deal, a great decision, because I think he's played above it or at it all year. So he's had a good season. I was wrong. Give credit for Isaiah Stewart. I'm not afraid to admit that I was wrong on something. I was off on Isaiah Stewart before the season. So Isaiah Stewart, another player that's had a good season. Maybe a Sar Thompson, but he has flaws, and he's a rookie. You expect rookies to have flaws, so it's hard to say like a rookie had a good or bad season when looking at the totality of things. As a rookie, yeah, I think Asar's had a good season as a rookie. But totality of things, I mean, it's hard to say like he's actually been a good player this year. As a rookie, though, I'd say like he mostly has been a good rookie. Outside of that, I'm not including guys they just traded for. So like Tech obviously has been good, but they just acquired him, so I'm not counting him. Outside of that, I don't think anyone else you could say has had a good season. At least I actually know what I wouldn't say has had a good season. Jane Ivey, like we said, he's shooting 32% from deep this year. He's been less efficient this year. Well, actually, maybe not less efficient, but a worse shooter this year. His finishing around the rim has gotten better. He's still not a very good defender. And the biggest parts of his game is of shooting and playing off of Cade. It just hasn't went extremely well this year. Jalen Duren, again, hasn't made that, didn't really improve defensively. And there's other things I'm concerned about. Like, these guys have improved in certain parts of their games, but when I say they had an overall good season, I would not say that. At least I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that, because if they both made the steps that people wanted them to make and they both had good seasons, like if you believe all core 4 guys had good seasons, then your core 4 basically stinks. Basically, is what you need to believe, because if your core 4 guys have good seasons across the board, NBA wise, standard NBA, like compared to the NBA players, and you still win 12 games, so like your core sucks basically. So like I wouldn't say they had a good season. So the only people I'd say is Cade and Stu. Really, that's where I would say it. So let me know if you guys disagree. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @Kook. I really want to hear from you guys about the first 20 minutes that we talked about. Just the truth of the situation, what the situation they found themselves in, what it looks like they're going to have to decide to do, and what you would do now, knowing that the situation they're in, it sounds like they're going to be forced into this offseason. Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KookaHill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out.